This week's episode is sponsored by NI Baby Scan. Thanks to their state-of-the-art equipment, NI Baby Scan offers expectant parents the chance to get a little closer to their little one. Scans include an early pregnancy scan to reassure, a dating scan to more accurately predict a due date, a gender scan to determine the sex of the baby, and a 3D or 4D scan to see their baby in amazing detail. To find out more, check out their website www.nibabyscan.com or call them on 07 887 630 739. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nugget Don't Fly. This is a Ian McKinley special interview. How are you, Ian?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I was saying to you beforehand, I didn't get the memo on being smartly dressed, but you three lads are looking absolutely fantastic.
Oh, lovely, thank you. And always joining me for the interview is Mr. Ollie Webb.
Well, Choppy, how are you? I'm fresh, just after my 50-mile run at 6 o'clock there this morning, so now I'm ready to go. So
lovely. And I take it Graham Crawford is as fresh as well, are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm the opposite of Ollie. I was up about 15 minutes earlier there.
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably the same, to be honest. Graham, have you got a wee drink for us today?
Yeah, I'm just keeping it basic today, just with a pint of water.
Lovely. Ian, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty boring as well, so I've got the water as well. Although my son was up early, so I could probably start having whiskey.
The early start. Ollie, what about you? You get whiskey?
3 from 3, just the water. Although there could be anything in this, but I'm gonna say it's water.
Yeah, I'm on a pint of the clear Guinness as well myself, and a wee black coffee just to get the morning going. Right. We'll get started into the questions then. So Ian, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, you played international rugby, you're a professional rugby player, but just tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you ended now.
Yeah, so for people who don't know me, my name's Ian McKinley and I'm a visually impaired ex-professional rugby player. So I was born in Dublin, where I would have played Gaelic football, but I always wanted to play rugby. That was always my dream. And when I left school, sort of the day after I had my last exams in school, I went straight into the Leinster Academy. So I was training with, Brian O'Driscoll, Contaponi, Darcy, all these players. So it was a baptism of fire going straight into training and playing against those guys. And then my sort of whole life turned around or changed in 2010 when I was playing a club game from a university, and just a teammate unfortunately stood on my face, and his stud went into my eyeball and it burst my eyeball, which was a pretty strange rugby incident. And yeah, I had emergency surgery where I was told that I needed to be a year basically out of any activity. I wasn't allowed to run or move any sudden movements or go to the gym or anything like that to put pressure on my eye. But I was lucky enough that the recovery happened so quickly that I got back sort of within 6 months and was back playing with Leinster in Joe Schmidt's first year as Leinster coach there. And sort of everything was going really well and the vision was getting better, but then complications arose with cataracts, and eventually my retina detached. So for anyone who knows anything about the eye, that if you start messing with the retina, that's pretty serious, because that's what gives you vision in your eyes. And mine had detached so much that it couldn't be repaired. So age 21, I made the reluctant decision to retire, and yeah, my whole world sort of turned upside down, and thought, well, what can I do? I went back and tried to finish my studies as best as I could. But I sort of turned more to the coaching, because that was something that I knew, apart from playing, I loved doing. And through working with, or just getting a bit of work experience with Leinster, I got a job opportunity to go to Italy. And there I was coach of a team for a few years, but I always wanted to go back and play rugby. And so much so, with the help of my brother and my family members, we I won't say we founded, but we helped push along the rugby goggles, which is basically a form of protection for eyes there was nothing around like that at the time. Grabbed the first pair in 2011, so I had retired for 3 years, but got back onto the field age 24, and just, a lot of things went for me in terms of luck and a lot of hard work, and managed to climb the ladder of Italian rugby, and made my international debut for Italy in 2017, and played there I was in Italy for a total of 9 years, I think. So I'm now back in Northern Ireland to bring you up to date. So that's me in a really 3 or 4 minute block. That's basically me.
Certainly lots to discuss there.
I'd say you missed the Italian sunshine, all right?
Well, judging by your background, it looks pretty sunny. I'm looking out here where I'm based, and it was hailstones about 2 seconds ago, and now it's sunny. But yeah, I missed the 20-degree difference, I must admit.
Well, I'm in sunny Galway, so I get blown. It looks sunny, but I get blown away every time I go outside. So
tough place to play, the sports ground. I can tell you, it's hard to find a nice day playing out there.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And just on the Italian thing, I was just wondering, did you have any Italian language whenever you went over there, or did you have to have a tough learning curve, and how long did it take to learn and start to communicate with all the boys out there?
Yeah, I went over with literally 2 words, and that was sort of the appeal of it, because I just wanted another challenge. And I mean, I studied Irish for 13 years. I'd say I have about 20 words. I studied French for 6 years. I have even less with that. So I was like, well, I want to maybe learn a different language, and I've always liked the sound of Italian. And it was pretty difficult trying to, as you can imagine, teach kids who necessarily didn't really like rugby. Trying to teach them rugby in broken Italian is pretty difficult, so you end up using your hands an awful lot, and Italians are very expressive anyway with the way that they talk, so that becomes even more paramount. So it took me about, I'd say, less than a year to really understand what people were saying on a consistent basis, and then 14 months to start talking. And I remember my boss said to me, it was just like, one day it'll click, and I just started saying, I think I was out at a bar, and drink always, within reason, obviously helps a little bit, and I might have been a little bit fiddly, and the phrases were just coming out of me, and people just stopped and were like, Ian, you're starting to speak Italian, so that gives you a bit of confidence.
Cool. Good stuff.
That's cool, yeah.
Not promoting the drinking, but
no,
you're promoting the Italian anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
And do you think you could have got by with the English, or do you think it was vital that you learned the Italian in terms of the not the coaching kids, but playing with the Italian sides and that sort of thing?
Oh no, you have to, for me, it would be like someone coming over to Galway there, or Belfast, wherever you are, and not learning English. You have to learn the language of, I believe, learn the language of the country that you're in, because in order just to get a bit of respect. And I think people are really sympathetic. If you try, at least they'll pick up on what you're saying. Now, there's a lot of rugby terminologies that are the same, and you can get by, but when you're in the thick of it and you're having to communicate, especially when you're an out half, having to communicate between forwards and backs playing, you need to have Italian 100%. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
That'd be hard work to get that sorted. And the next thing here, Ian, is what do you feel there's a difference between the Irish and the Italian teams in terms of culture and funding?
Culture and funding.
Yeah.
So I'd say, well, I'll tackle the culture part first. So weather obviously is a massive difference. So maybe outdoor living is a bit more there. Just because due to the temperature has been a bit warmer. Now, in fairness, in the winter time it does get colder, but it just rains an awful lot less. So the biggest thing that I found culturally different was having the siestas. So you literally from 12:30 to 3:30 everything was closed, and even in the summertime when it got up to 40 degrees, even 4:30, people didn't go back to work till then. Having aperitivos at sort of 6 o'clock, for people that did sort of knock off work early. you'd have a couple of hours, maybe from 5:30 to 7:30 before dinner, where people would just meet out in a bar, have a drink, have a spritz Aperol, or have something like that, little snacks before their main meal. Whereas here in Ireland, everything 9 to 5, you maybe have your dinner, do a bit of sport, and then it might be to the pub, or vice versa, whichever. So it's culturally, it's absolutely different. In terms of funding, you know, rugby is not a big sport at all, not a popular sport, and not as a popular sport as, say, football or skiing or something like that. So rugby definitely wouldn't get the same amount of funding as other sports in Italy, in comparison to, say, rugby in Ireland.
Yeah. How long do you think it'll take for Italy to really catch up with the bigger teams, or if ever?
Yeah, so, sorry, I got my little doggy here. Yeah, it's I suppose a question that a lot of people want answers to, because Italy obviously haven't won a game since 2015 and the Six Nations. Yeah, it's a question with a lot of different answers, because you know, in the near 10 years that I was there, I've seen enough to give me confidence to say that Italy produces good enough players. It's just from a structure point of view, Italy is far behind other nations, and when you're competing against Ireland, who are one of the top nations, Wales, England, France, consistently, unfortunately Italy were just a little bit behind when it comes to all that. So I mean, I'm not going to put a time frame on when Italy's going to be competitive, you know, competitive like they were in the 90s, you know, beating Ireland 3 times, beating France and all this sort of stuff. There is a fair amount to catch up on, but I've definitely seen enough to say, or that you know, Italy will, I won't say be a powerhouse in world rugby, but definitely, you know, they'll be able to notch off 2 or 3 victories in the Six Nations in the future. At the moment, it's not the case.
Yeah.
And what would your thoughts be then on a promotion relegation for the Six Nations? Would you say to back Italy and hope they come good, or would you say to give other teams sort of the opportunity to have a go with them?
Yeah, I can understand.
Like, we do want to see a bit of the competitiveness back as well.
Yeah, and it's a very valid point. I think all you need to, the argument for that, I would say, is all you need to do is listen to Neil Doak, who said Georgia aren't even ready to go into the Six Nations. So if he's saying that as a coach, then that's all you need to know. Now, are Italy, was the last Six Nations good? Absolutely not. Was the Six Nations in 2019 when I was there good? Technically, no. We lost 5 games. We lost 3 games by, we lost 4 games by 12 points or less. So does that indicate to you that you know, there was something building, and then they've decided to take on the identity of France and basically pick players who are 30 or under? It's a completely different scenario, because in France you've got a lot more players and you've got a higher quality of league that they can play and get acclimatized to, whereas in Italy you just have the 2 teams, and the division below that is called the Eccellenza, and you've got, that league is just not good enough even to step up to the Pro 14 level, which is not the top. So you know, I don't think it's a valid argument yet, but I can understand for the purists that they would maybe want to go back to a 5 nations or a relegation playoff. But I think Italy we're caught in the middle at the moment, where the other teams are just too good and Italy are better than the rest.
Yeah.
In the last, I know things come around pretty quickly, but you know, a few years ago Italy did beat Georgia, I will say, comfortably. The scoreline wasn't, you know, it was 11 points, but should have won by way more. You play teams like Canada, you play other teams, and you win easily enough. So I just think Italy are just stuck with, you know, like a Fiji, like America, are just stuck in that bracket where trying to find consistent competitiveness is pretty hard.
Yeah, they need you back by the sounds of things, I think.
I think Paolo Garbisi is doing an okay job.
Yeah,
he's already scored and played more than me, so I think he's doing okay.
Be a decent 10-12 partnership though. I'll just put that out there.
Jeez, I don't know. I played 12. I know I played 13 against England, the Six Nations against Tuolagi and Bentillo, and I don't think they would even remember who I was.
So I'm just wondering, Ian, what did it feel like to play for Italy? Because I'd imagine your dream was always maybe to wear the green jersey. But was there the same sense of pride putting on the Italian jersey and singing the Italian anthem on your Italian debut?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to play Irish 20s, and even, you know, I captained one game in the World Cup. So in some ways I did put on the green jersey, not at international level, but at under 20. So, but yeah, there was a huge amount of pride, and you know, from a rugby point of view, definitely it is my proudest moment, and it was even more sweet because we beat Fiji, and Fiji, as we all know, are pretty world class. I think they're a world class nation. If they get a bit of development behind them, you know, those island teams are just outrageous. So no, definitely the proudest moment of my rugby career, hands down. And yeah, was it sort of, it was everything I sort of thought it would have been, not from a young age, but my priorities and my loyalties definitely changed. And at the end of the day, Italy were the ones that gave me an opportunity to you know, continue my career, and whenever other union blocked the door, they opened it up. So no, my loyalties definitely changed. So yeah, when you see your family in the stand bursting out crying during the national anthem, you know, that's pretty, you know, emotional. So you can only imagine what it's like for guys now getting their first caps with no people around in the stadiums. It must be very difficult for all those people. I was fortunate enough to to not play in that in that surrounding. So yeah, to have your family and friends, your nearest and dearest there was pretty special.
You'll have to sing us the anthem to round out the show.
You don't want to hear my tone deaf accent.
Ian, we'll just talk a tiny bit about your injury, if that's okay. It was about 2010-11 you got injured, and even already at that point you'd achieved so much. I think you got 10 or so caps for the Irish under-20s, and you captained them, as you said. But what was it like receiving the news at that time that you might not be able to play again?
Yeah, so I think the shock of your eyeball bursting and not really knowing what's going on was one thing, but I just was sort of pretty stubborn. I think when you're, you know, you guys are young. When I was, you know, a bit younger, I was 20 when it happened, you sort of feel like you're indestructible and just wanted to get back in the field as quick as possible, which I did. But then, yeah, when the surgeon said that your retina is detached, we can't do anything more, it was like a death. It really was. And people all around me, my family and friends, crying, and because they knew that this was what, not that I was destined to do, but it was definitely just the thing that I loved the most in the world, which sounds ridiculous, you know, but it was what I loved doing and committed myself to doing it. So it was, there were dark days, absolutely, but sort of the way I coped with it was just by working as much as I could and not thinking about it, which in reality, I didn't really open up to anyone, and sort of your sadness would probably come out in ways that you can't control, and that sort of happened to me when I was in Italy. So that would have happened about a year and a half later. So it's definitely important to chat to people as much as you can.
Yeah, and there's a silver lining on that as well. Obviously, you've brought so much like international recognition towards you know, eye injuries and the goggles. Could you just tell us a bit about how that kind of project has progressed in the past decade or so, and where you think it will be in maybe 10 years' time?
Yeah, so definitely playing for Italy has been the highest honour of my career. But outside of that, and to go further than that, the proudest moment will be having nearly 2,500 people registered using goggles worldwide. So whether that's children, adults, and all that, and they're not for everyone, you know. Definitely for people who need them, I would be a big advocate for them, you know. It definitely gives people confidence. Are there issues with them? Yes, absolutely. But anything that comes out, you know, it takes time and it takes trial, it takes money, get these things right. But you know, I still get messages from people saying, you know, I have a son or a niece or a nephew, whatever it is, that has a visual impairment or is struggling with the eye, or they haven't had an accident and these goggles, you know, can you give us some advice, or the goggles have been a huge help. So that gives me absolute huge satisfaction so far. In terms of where it's going to go, I mean, you've seen high prolific players. I mean, Ardi Sevilla tried them out. They didn't last exactly too long in the World Cup, but I think it's important to show that they can be used on a world stage. Again, they're not for everyone, and it took me years to really know how they work and what's the best way of using them. But everyone has their own individual way of going about it. But no, it's definitely a proud moment, and you know, hopefully those numbers will continue to grow if people need them.
Yeah, it's an inspiring business to have. I think it's really good. I was going to move on to when you played for the Barbarians. What was it like playing with the Barbarians? And we were talking to Craig Newby before, and he said it was an unbelievable experience. So I was just wondering from what you thought of it.
Yeah, probably a bit hazy because you had a bit of alcohol involved. So no, it's one of the most famous teams in the world, and yeah, it was really important for me because it was also the first time that the goggles had been used in Scotland as well. So we played against the Heriots in their, I think it was their 125th year anniversary game, and you know, it wasn't against an international team, but you're still playing for the Barbarians, and there were still, you know, fairly high prolific players that were on the Babas team, and I think that the game finished 97-31. So you can imagine the free-flowing rugby that was happening there. So no, wonderful experience, and again, it was just it was another milestone for the goggles. You know, not only were you playing in professional leagues in Italy, but then you were playing in European competitions, Pro 12 as it was at the time, and then you were playing in the jersey, the black and white of the Barbarians. So yeah, it was definitely a good experience.
Definitely won't complain about it anyway.
No, well, Edinburgh's good for a few drinks afterwards as well, so yeah. It's not too bad.
Graham would know all about that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I'm in Edinburgh at the moment actually, so it's good crack.
Okay, you probably know a bit more than me.
Yeah.
He does his research anyway.
Certainly does. I can tell.
Next up, Ian. So one of my housemates down here is actually a rainy old boy, and he's very, very excited about your coaching appointment there. And I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts going into that? Just really, that's it. Are you excited? Any particular players to look out for? Or
well, I have to ask him, has he been at training yet?
He's not training at the moment now.
Right.
He's down messing around, but sure, he'll be back soon.
He'll be back soon, hopefully in good condition.
I hope. Well, I'll try my best for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, I was probably going to be a few more years in Italy, just due to the pandemic. Obviously, myself and my wife prioritized coming back to family and friends. I think whenever something like this happens, you migrate closer to home, and we just had a son there a few months ago, and if we were stuck in our apartment without sort of family support, that might have been a bit tricky. So yeah, Rainey is a local club to where I'm based now at the moment, and you know, they're in AIL 2A, and you know, people go, well, why would you move back from Venice to Northern Ireland? You know, it's a bit of a change, but like, I'm excited to start up in club rugby, my coaching career, because I think there's definitely, you know, like a player, everyone has to start somewhere, and you know, I've learned a huge amount from school, AIL rugby, professional ranks, to international ranks, to hopefully start that again up in the coaching. I wouldn't want to be someone who suddenly starts up in a professional game. I think it's good to touch base with the roots of rugby again, and sort of volunteers, and get a different perspective on what rugby is like, because the international professional stage is really such a small percentage in comparison to people who actually partake in rugby. So Yeah, we'll see. The rainy lads take the mick out of me, which is good. They don't give one iota who you are, which is, I appreciate that. Things might change whenever I actually take the reins in a few months' time. But no, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully just we get some sort of fluidity and get games weekly and get back to some sort of normality and people actually watching games, because it's been a ridiculously hard year for a lot of people.
Sure, as long as you don't start to beat Armagh, then we'll be all right.
Well, Armagh, we had 3 games, and Armagh was one of them, and they beat us by about 50 points. So
one of the lads.
Oh no, Matt.
Yeah. Hopefully Armagh back one day.
Oh, I don't know about that. Aside from the playing and the coaching, I think you've done a bit of punditry as well for Virgin Media. So just wondering what the routine on a match day for you would be, and what's the biggest challenge of being a pundit?
Biggest challenge would be having to sort of put aside your personal preferences and your mates maybe watching it. So you have to call it down the middle, don't you? I'm not someone who's going to just come out with a silly phrase just for the sake of it to try get a few more hits. I'll try call it down the middle as best I can. If someone does well, I'll pat them on the back. If they do something badly, I'll call it out. So like I would expect whenever I played, you don't want any sort of easy outs or anything like that. So I just want to be seen as fair. So I think that's sort of the hardest thing, making sure that your mates don't pick up on anything too bad. And then just the routine, I suppose, is you're just in studio a few hours just before the game. It's just with COVID, it's a bit different. Obviously, there might not be as many people in the studio as what there might have been previously. And just making sure you know every player's name. I think that's a massive thing, because you really need to know how teams play, and I think that's something that you'd be used to as a player. If you were playing, I don't know, the Champions Cup final in a few weeks, you need to know exactly how Toulouse and La Rochelle play, and that's sort of helping from the punditry side of things. It's just a natural progression into looking at teams, how they go about things.
Nice. This is just a final kind of serious question here. You've played for the 2 big Italian teams. You've played for the Italian national team. You've played for Leinster. We've seen recently, especially with Wales Rugby Union and the footballing world, about criticism on social media. And as someone who's probably never going to go anywhere near professional rugby and just going to be a fan, what's the difference between abuse and criticism in the context of social media?
Geez, that's a very in-depth question with a potential in-depth answer. Yeah, I suppose, I think when you're in the bubble of professional sport, no matter what it is, whether it's rugby or athletics or whatever, you don't pay any attention to it. You shouldn't. I know guys would read it, and this is a thing that's happening now. You play the game and you go into the changing room, and guys would look on social media, whether it's a good or bad thing. You can't do it, because whether you have a good game, you can be put on a pedestal, and then the next week you'd have a terrible game, and then people write horrendous things about you. So I think it's really important for people to have just sort of a group of people around them, or a single person that they can go to and make sure that whether they perform really well or perform really badly, they still have that happy medium. That's what I would have tried to do anyway, as best as I could. So people who write things on social media, I always look at it as, people write things negatively about me on Twitter, for example, that my wife will pick on, but I don't read those things, because would people say that to you face to face? It's easy to hide behind a profile, and people are entitled to their opinion. That's absolutely fine. But players, whenever you're in the heat of battle, heat of the moment, I'd like to see those people step onto the field and see exactly how well their decision making is, or skill set under pressure. And trust me, whenever players lose, people think Italian rugby players as well don't care about losing. It's so hard. How can you motivate players who or on a losing streak and lose. I've been there, I've done that. It's hard. And players don't go out there to lose. You basically fixate your whole time, particularly around Six Nations time. You've got a 3-month period there where you're just fully immersed, fully intense. You're away from your family, you're having to travel the whole time. It's not like Ireland where you might get a day where you can go back home during the week, like you are down in Rome. A 4.5-hour train journey from where you live. You're not getting back. You're just away, and you put everything into it. So people can criticize all they want, but it's, as long as you know you're doing the right thing and trying to do your best, what can people say? And if they do say something, say la vie. You just don't listen to it.
Yeah, good answer.
Good answer. No, it's awful to see. Hopefully there's less and less of it. But on to the slightly lighter-hearted questions then, Ian. As an international 10, I think you're well placed to answer this. Who would be your choice for number 10 for the Lions this summer?
Yeah, everyone's been asking me this. It's a really tough one. I think if you're to go on performance and past record, I think you can't look further than Johnny Sexton. The only question mark is durability and whether he will be available for those for that first test, or can he compete in 2 tests. Now, games are so brutal. To play 3 tests is a real ask. I think you've seen that down through the years. It's that first 23 players are not going to be the same 23 players for the 3 games. So if it was me, I would still pick him. I think he just, when he's on song, he's on song. His kicking was the best in the Six Nations, and just what he's done. The only question mark is can his body hold up? Hopefully he gets no head clashes. If you're South Africa, though, I think you'd want him to play, just due to the fact that he has had these head clashes and they'll go for him. But what team doesn't go for a number 10? That's basically, everyone knows that. But he would definitely be my pick. He's proved that he's better than Finn Russell in a temperamental point of view. Owen Farrell didn't have the best time and hasn't been playing 10. Dan Biggar's the only one that I could say from an international standpoint would be the only one that can at a consistent level would start over him.
Yeah, he'd be my pick at the moment, actually, Dan Biggar, but it's Dan definitely between the 2, I think.
Sexton's my pick as well, so good answer there, Ian. So moving on here, Ian, you've played with some very, very good rugby players. I was just wondering, who's the best player you've ever played with?
Yeah, so many. I think it's so hard to distinguish between a forward and a back. I think in terms of the backs, one of the best that I've ever played with is Issa Nathewa, just because I was fortunate enough to play with and against him, and to play with him was a joy. To play against him was an absolute nightmare. He absolutely trolleyed me in a tackle one time, I remember. It just completely winded me. He's not the biggest of guys, but he just had so much skill, and his brain just worked at a different pace to other people. So he's definitely one that stands out. No. And then for the forwards, you'd have to say the legendary Parise, just based on, I didn't get maybe his best years, but he, me as a kid growing up watching him, what a player, what an absolute.
They're both unbelievable, yeah.
Different gravy.
Yeah.
All right, Ian. Last question here, and I'll limit you to a 1-word answer. Who's your GOAT?
Who's my GOAT? Does it have to be a sporting context? Yeah.
Yeah, has to be a rugby
player. As a rugby player. Well then, Carter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
that was easy enough.
Yeah. If you talk about different sports, I have a different answer. But
yeah. Oh, we could talk for that for ages. But I think on that note, we'll wrap up the interview. Graham, I think, might have a little surprise for you in there.
Yeah, coming on. Have a wee poem for you here, Ian.
Do you? Jeez. Well, you've got 2 minutes, 45 seconds to get the poem out.
It's not too long or anything, but right. You grew up in Dublin. You moved to Italy. You've inspired us all to play our best. You've played for Italy. We'll forgive you for that. For it's a great honour for you to be here. I wish you all the best at Rainy Old Boys, and forgive us if we beat you. But we'll meet you after for a couple of drinks and have the crack.
Cheers, Graham. Appreciate it.
Good job.
Beautifully constructed.
Thank you.
Good delivery as well.
You were up all night doing that, I'm assuming.
I was, yeah.
Considering you just woke up 15 minutes prior to the interview.
Yeah. On that bombshell, I think what's left to do is to thank Ian for his time and coming on to the pod.
Worries.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ian. It's lovely to
No
speak to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Graham and Ollie, for coming on as always and being brilliant hosts.
Well, cheers, Chappy.
You too.
Right, and thanks everyone for listening, and keep an eye out the next couple of weeks for some more footballer interviews. Thanks for listening.